Chapter 1. The Call of the Cosmos. Zara stood at the helm of her ship, the Astral Wanderer, her hands gripping the cool, smooth controls as she gazed out into the vast, endless expanse of space. The stars stretched out before her, each one a beacon of untold possibilities, each one a whisper in the dark. For years she had been seeking a legend that few believed to be real, a treasure hidden among the stars, one that could change the fate of the universe. The treasure, known as the Eternal Relic, was said to be a gift from the ancient celestial beings who once ruled the cosmos. According to myth, it held unimaginable power, the key to unlocking the mysteries of the universe itself. It was a treasure that had been lost for centuries, hidden away in a place so far from the known worlds that no one had dared to search for it. Until now. Zara wasn't just anyone. She was a navigator, one of the best in the galaxy, with a mind as sharp as the stars themselves. She had grown up hearing the stories of the Eternal Relic from her grandmother, a legendary explorer in her own right, who had spent her life chasing rumors and myths of lost treasures. Zara had inherited her grandmother's ship and her insatiable curiosity, a curiosity that had driven her to search for the relic her entire life. But now, standing on the precipice of discovery, Zara was more uncertain than ever. The path ahead was fraught with dangers, pirates, hostile alien species, and the uncharted territories of the deep cosmos. Yet, none of that could deter her. She knew the stakes. The Eternal Relic was more than just a treasure. It was a promise that her grandmother's legacy would live on, that her search for meaning in the stars would not be in vain. "Zara, the coordinates are locked in," a voice called from behind her. It was Aris, her trusted AI assistant, a constant companion on her journey. Zara turned to face the holographic projection of the sleek, humanoid form that had been by her side since her first voyage into the unknown. "Thank you, Aris," Zara replied, her voice steady, though her heart raced in her chest. She had been preparing for this moment for years, but now that it was finally here, the weight of the journey ahead pressed heavily on her shoulders. The AI's glowing blue eyes seemed to soften, as though it could sense her anxiety. "Are you certain about this, Zara? The relic is said to be cursed. Many have tried and failed to find it. There's no telling what dangers await you." Zara smiled, a hint of determination in her gaze. "I know the risks, but I also know that no one has ever succeeded because they let fear control them. My grandmother always told me that the stars do not give up their secrets easily. They only reveal themselves to those who dare to seek them." Eris didn't respond, but Zara could sense the AI's unspoken concern. She had programmed it with the wisdom of countless star systems, but even it couldn't deny the dangers that lay ahead. Still, Zara felt something stirring within her, something far deeper than mere curiosity, something she couldn't ignore. As she sat back in the captain's chair, she allowed herself a moment to feel the weightlessness of space, the calm before the storm. She had studied the ancient maps and deciphered the cryptic clues her grandmother had left behind. She had found the coordinates, the final key to unlocking the relic's location. It was a place no one had dared to venture, a nebula shrouded in mystery where the boundaries of time and space were said to blur. "This is it," Zara whispered to herself, feeling the thrill of the unknown course through her veins. The beginning of the end. The engines of the Astral Wanderer hummed to life, and the ship slowly began to glide forward, cutting through the fabric of space. The stars stretched and warped around them as they entered hyperspace, the familiar universe outside distorting into a swirl of color and light. As they hurtled through the cosmic expanse, Zara thought of her grandmother once more, the woman who had taught her to trust the stars, who had instilled in her the belief that every corner of the universe held a story waiting to be discovered. Zara had inherited not just her grandmother's ship, but her spirit, a spirit that could never rest until the greatest mystery of all was solved. The stars above her were more than just distant pinpricks of light. They were beacons, a map, a will, a call. Zara was ready to answer it. Chapter 2: The Nebula's Edge. The journey through hyperspace was always disorienting, the familiar world stretching into an endless blur of colors and lights. Zara had grown accustomed to the sensation, but it never failed to remind her of the vastness of the universe she was navigating. The astral wanderer was her vessel, her lifeline through the void, and it hummed steadily beneath her, a comforting presence in the face of the unknown. As the ship cut through the swirling fabric of space, Zara's thoughts drifted back to the map she had been studying for weeks. The coordinates were so precise, yet so elusive. The eternal relic was hidden in the heart of the Lithian Nebula, a vast cloud of gas and dust that had been unexplored for centuries. Ancient texts spoke of it as a place where the stars themselves seemed to vanish, a blackened void that swallowed everything in its path. It was a region of space where the laws of physics were said to bend, where reality itself could fracture. But that was why Zara was here. She didn't believe in the impossibility of it all. After all, if anyone was capable of finding the relic, it was her. The stories her grandmother had left behind, the cryptic clues in her journals, they all pointed to this moment. The eternal relic was real, and Zara was the one who would find it. The ship's systems hummed a soft warning, snapping her from her thoughts. Eris's voice, calm and precise, echoed through the ship. "Zara, we are nearing the edge of the Lithian Nebula. Disturbances in the gravitational field detected. I advise caution." Zara tightened her grip on the controls, her eyes narrowing. The Lithian Nebula had long been known for its strange phenomena. Ships that ventured too close often reported navigational failures, mysterious disappearances, and occasionally strange distortions in time. Zara's grandmother had barely escaped with her life after one such encounter, but Zara was different. She wasn't afraid of the unknown. She embraced it. After all, it was the unknown that held the greatest rewards. Adjusting course, Zara muttered to herself, guiding the ship's trajectory with steady hands. Her heart beat faster as the nebula loomed closer, its clouded form barely visible against the backdrop of stars. It was a vast, swirling mass of colors, deep purples and blues mixing with fiery reds and oranges. The nebula seemed alive, breathing, shifting with the pulse of the universe. Eris's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Zara, you should prepare for a sharp gravitational pull. The nebula's core is unstable. If we're pulled too far in, we may lose control." Zara hesitated for only a moment. She had come this far. There was no turning back now. She tapped the controls, bringing the astral wanderer closer to the nebula's edge. The ship shook slightly as it passed through a turbulent field of cosmic dust, the instruments flickering as the gravitational forces began to increase. Zara felt the familiar weightlessness of space turn into a strange, pulling sensation, as if the very fabric of the universe was trying to drag her in. The stars outside distorted, stretching into elongated streaks of light. The nebula ahead seemed to grow darker, its edges swirling like a great cosmic storm. "Hold on," Zara said, her voice steady, though her pulse quickened. She adjusted the ship's stabilization system, bracing herself for the intense forces at play. The ship groaned as it fought against the pull of the nebula, the engines straining as they pushed forward. Suddenly, a sharp jolt rattled the astral wanderer, sending Zara's body crashing against the safety restraints. The ship lurched violently to the side, the instruments flashing red as alarms blared. "Eris!" Zara shouted, fighting to regain control. "What happened?" The AI's voice crackled through the speaker, a hint of urgency in its tone. "The gravitational field is intensifying. A nearby anomaly has caused a rupture in our systems. I'm attempting to compensate for the imbalance, but we may need to abort the mission if we cannot stabilize." Zara's mind raced as she worked to override the malfunctioning systems. The nebula's strange forces were pushing her to the limit, but she couldn't afford to retreat now. She had come too far, and the treasure she sought was within her reach. "Do whatever it takes to keep us intact," Zara commanded, her eyes fixed on the swirling mass of the nebula. "We're not turning back." Minutes passed like hours as Zara fought against the forces tearing at her ship. The tension in the air was palpable, the ship's groans and creaks echoing through the hull as it struggled to maintain its course. Zara's hands flew across the controls, adjusting thrust and navigation systems with practiced precision. Her focus was absolute, every fiber of her being locked onto the task at hand. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the ship began to stabilize. The alarms faded, and the tremors lessened. The astral wanderer had passed through the worst of the turbulence. "We're through," Eris said, its voice calm once more. "We've crossed into the nebula's interior. The relic's coordinates are within reach. Proceed with caution." Zara exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Her heart was still racing, but she had made it. The eternal relic was closer than ever. She glanced out the viewport, her eyes tracing the nebula's swirling colors. It was even more beautiful up close, its gases and particles dancing in the light of distant stars. But beyond its beauty, Zara knew the danger it held. She was no longer just searching for a treasure. She was diving into the heart of an ancient enigma, one that could either grant her unimaginable power or swallow her whole. With a determined breath, Zara set the course for the center of the nebula. The eternal relic awaited her. Chapter 3. The Forgotten Temple. Zara's heart pounded in her chest as she guided the astral wanderer deeper into the swirling heart of the Lithian nebula. The colors outside the ship had shifted again, becoming more vibrant and alien, as if the very space around her was alive. The gravitational anomalies had faded, but she could feel a strange hum vibrating through the ship, like the nebula was calling to her. "We're approaching the center," Eris announced, its voice steady but tinged with caution. "The relic's coordinates are within 1,000 kilometers. I'm detecting a strange energy signature in the area. It's unlike anything we've encountered before." Zara's grip tightened on the controls. The air around her felt charged with anticipation, the faintest spark of excitement rising within her. The treasure she had spent her entire life searching for was so close, but the warning in Oris's voice reminded her that this was not just any treasure. This was the eternal relic, and its power was ancient, possibly beyond comprehension. She leaned forward, her eyes scanning the displays. The energy signature Eris had mentioned was growing stronger, its readings erratic and unpredictable. It didn't feel natural. Zara felt a chill creep down her spine. This was no ordinary artifact. The relic had been hidden for a reason. "Stay alert, Eris," Zara muttered under her breath, her hand steady, but her mind racing. She had been prepared for the dangers of the nebula, but this felt different. The closer they got, the more she could sense it. An ancient force, dormant for eons, now stirring to life. The ship continued to glide through the dense clouds of gas and dust, each movement becoming slower, more deliberate. Then, in the distance, Zara saw something, a faint, shadowy outline against the swirling chaos of the nebula. It was like a whisper of something long forgotten, half hidden in the mists of time. "What is that?" Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. She couldn't believe her eyes. Oris analyzed the image, its systems whirring in the background. "It appears to be a structure of some kind, a massive temple or ruins. It matches the ancient descriptions of the Temple of the Celestial Watchers, the guardians of the eternal relic. This could be the place." Zara's breath caught in her throat. She had read about the Temple of the Celestial Watchers, but it had always been more myth than fact. Legends told of a race of beings who had once ruled the stars and hidden the relic away in a sacred temple, guarded by puzzles and traps to deter any would-be thieves. Many had tried to find the temple, but none had returned. This was it. The eternal relic was real, and now Zara had to find a way inside. "Prepare the landing gear," Zara ordered, her voice firm. "We're going in." The astral wanderer began its descent toward the temple, its landing gear extending with a soft hiss. The closer they got, the more the temple's true shape began to emerge from the nebula's mist. It was massive, larger than anything Zara had ever seen, with towering spires that reached toward the heavens like skeletal fingers. The architecture was unlike any she had encountered, an intricate blend of geometric precision and alien design. The walls were adorned with strange symbols, glowing faintly in the dim light of the nebula. It was as though the temple itself was alive, its presence ancient and overpowering. "Zara, I'm detecting unusual energy readings coming from the temple's interior," Eris warned. "There's a strong electromagnetic field. It could interfere with our systems if we get too close." Zara nodded, her eyes narrowing as she adjusted their approach. The electromagnetic interference was expected. Ancient structures like this often had powerful defenses to keep out intruders, but Zara was prepared for this. Her grandmother's journals had described similar obstacles in other lost temples she had explored. The trick was to remain calm and think logically. The astral wanderer touched down on the dusty surface of the temple grounds with a soft thud. The landing was smooth, but Zara could feel the weight of the moment. She was standing on the edge of history. "We've arrived," Zara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Let's make sure this is worth it." She unstrapped herself from the seat and stood, stretching her legs as the doors of the ship hissed open. The air outside was thick with the strange atmosphere of the nebula, and the ground was uneven, covered in ancient dust and debris. Zara's boots crunched as she stepped out onto the surface of the temple. the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. The temple loomed ahead, its entrance a vast, imposing archway. Strange symbols were etched into the stone, glowing faintly as though they were alive, responding to her presence. She could feel the pulse of something ancient, something powerful, deep within the temple's walls. Eris's voice crackled in her earpiece. Zara, the readings indicate a series of complex traps inside. Be careful. Zara nodded, her hand resting on the hilt of the blade at her side. She had faced traps and puzzles before. The key was to stay focused, trust her instincts, and remember the lessons her grandmother had taught her. With one last glance at the astral wanderer, Zara made her way toward the entrance of the temple. As she crossed the threshold, the air grew colder, and the faint hum of energy seemed to intensify. The deeper she ventured into the temple, the stronger the sensation grew. She was close. The eternal relic was within reach, but the temple would not give it up easily. Chapter 4: The Trials of the Celestial Watchers. Zara stepped deeper into the temple, her eyes scanning the walls for any signs of the traps Aris had warned her about. The air was thick with the weight of ancient secrets, and every step she took seemed to reverberate in the silence. The symbols carved into the stone flickered faintly, their glow pulsing in time with her heartbeat, as though the temple itself was aware of her presence. The hallway stretched before her, dim and narrow, with towering statues of celestial beings standing guard at regular intervals. Their faces were serene, but their eyes, carved from gleaming stone, seemed to follow her every move, as if judging her. Zara, Eris's voice echoed in her earpiece, a hint of caution in its tone. I'm detecting a change in the atmosphere. The electromagnetic field is fluctuating. It could be a sign that the trials are about to begin. Stay vigilant. Zara nodded, her senses heightened. The trials of the celestial watchers were legendary, described in ancient texts as tests of both mind and body. Many had perished here, victims of the deadly traps set to guard the relic. But Zara was no ordinary treasure hunter. She had trained her entire life for moments like this, and she knew she had the skills to survive whatever the temple threw at her. The hallway suddenly opened up into a vast chamber. The ceiling soared high above her, a dome of intricately carved stone that seemed to disappear into darkness. At the center of the chamber stood an altar, bathed in a soft, ethereal light. The eternal relic lay atop the altar, its form shrouded in mystery, its exact shape hidden from view by a translucent force field. But Zara's attention was immediately drawn to the stone pillars surrounding the room. Each one was adorned with strange markings, and as she stepped forward, she felt a shift in the air, as if the room itself had come alive. The ground beneath her feet trembled slightly, and then, suddenly, the sound of ancient mechanisms grinding into motion echoed through the chamber. "Zara, look out!" Oris shouted, its voice filled with urgency. Before Zara could react, the pillars around her began to glow with a fierce intensity, and from them emerged a series of swirling, ethereal shapes, glistening entities of light and shadow that danced and hovered in the air like sentient specters. They moved with purpose, circling the altar as if guarding the relic itself. The trial had begun. Zara's instincts kicked in, and she unsheathed her blade, the cold steel gleaming in the faint light. She was no stranger to combat, but these were no ordinary foes. The beings before her were not physical creatures. They were manifestations of the temple's energy, intangible and ethereal. To fight them head-on would be pointless. Eris, any suggestions? Zara asked, her voice steady despite the growing tension. I'm analyzing their movements. They seem to react to your proximity. If you can find a way to disrupt their flow, you might be able to disable them, Eris responded. But be careful, Zara. These entities are linked to the temple's core. Destroying them might cause a collapse. Zara's mind raced as she observed the entities. They seemed to move in a rhythmic pattern, a delicate dance of light and shadow. She realized they were not attacking her, not yet, at least. They were waiting for something, perhaps for her to make the first move. Her eyes shifted to the symbols on the pillars. They were not just decorative, they were a part of the puzzle. Each symbol seemed to correspond to a particular pattern of light that shifted in the entity's movements. Zara's heart skipped a beat as a realization hit her. The trial was not about brute force. It was about understanding the pattern and manipulating it to her advantage. With a deep breath, Zara approached the closest pillar, her fingers brushing against the cool stone. As soon as she touched it, a pulse of energy surged through her, and the symbols on the pillar shifted, glowing brighter. The entities immediately reacted, their movements becoming more erratic, as if disturbed by her touch. Zara quickly moved to the next pillar, repeating the process. Each time she activated a pillar, the energy from the entities seemed to shift, becoming more chaotic. She could feel the pressure building, the temple itself seemingly reacting to her every move. The glowing shapes darted faster, but now they were disoriented, their once synchronized movements splintering into confusion. Eris, I'm almost there, Zara muttered, her focus unwavering as she activated the final pillar. What happens next? The energy flow should now be disrupted, Eris explained. But you'll need to act quickly. The entities will regain their focus in a few moments. If you don't reach the relic in time, the trial will reset. Zara's pulse quickened. She glanced at the altar, the eternal relic still obscured by the shimmering force field. The entities, now swirling in disarray, seemed to be fading, their power waning as the pillar's energies were realigned. She bolted toward the altar, her heart pounding in her chest. As she reached the pedestal, the force field flickered, its intensity weakening. Zara reached out, her fingers brushing the edge of the field. A surge of energy coursed through her body, and with a final push, she deactivated the force field, allowing the eternal relic to be revealed in all its glory. The relic was a crystal. No, not just any crystal. It was a living piece of the universe itself, its surface shifting with the colors of distant galaxies, swirling with the power of the stars. It radiated an aura of immense power, ancient and eternal. Zara's breath caught in her throat as she reached for the relic, feeling its energy course through her as soon as her fingers made contact. The moment she touched it, the temple trembled, as if acknowledging her success. But Zara knew this was only the beginning. She had passed the first trial. But there were more to come, and the power of the eternal relic was not without its price. Chapter 5. The Awakening of the Relic. Zara's fingers tightened around the eternal relic, the crystal humming with an otherworldly energy as it pulsed in her hand. The power coursing through her was overwhelming, almost intoxicating. It was as though the very fabric of the universe had been woven into the relic, and now that energy was becoming part of her. But With this power came an undeniable weight, an ancient force, dormant for eons, had now been awakened. The temple continued to shake beneath her feet, its walls groaning with the force of the disturbance. Zara's heart pounded in her chest, the crystal's energy mirroring the rapid beat of her pulse. She knew she had to act quickly. The temple was not finished with her yet. "Zara!" Eris's voice crackled urgently in her earpiece. "I'm detecting a massive surge in energy within the temple. Something's wrong. The relic is reacting to your presence, but the temple's defenses are now fully activated." Zara's gaze snapped to the entrance of the chamber. The once silent hallway was now filled with ominous rumbling, and the statues lining the walls began to glow with a fierce light. The celestial watchers, guardians of the temple, had been disturbed, and they were not pleased. The floor beneath her trembled violently, and then, from the shadows, massive stone doors began to slide open. A deep, resonant voice echoed through the chamber, its tone ancient and unforgiving. "You have awakened the relic, intruder, but such power cannot be claimed without consequence." Zara froze, the weight of the voice settling over her like a heavy cloud. She had read about the celestial watchers, beings of light and stone, ancient guardians tasked with protecting the most powerful artifacts in the universe. But this was different. The relic was alive, and it had recognized her. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall, cloaked in glowing robes of stardust, its face hidden beneath a hood. Its presence was commanding, its power radiating outward, filling the chamber with an overwhelming force. The figure's eyes, if they could even be called eyes, were like burning stars, piercing through Zara with an intensity that made her heart skip a beat. "You have disturbed the balance," the figure continued, its voice reverberating through Zara's very soul. "The relic is not meant for mortal hands. Return it, or face the wrath of the Watchers." Zara stood tall, despite the weight of the figure's presence bearing down on her. She had come this far, and she wasn't about to turn back now. "I will not return it," she said, her voice steady. "The relic has chosen me. I will use its power to save my people." The figure remained silent for a long moment, studying her with those piercing, celestial eyes. The energy in the room was thick, heavy with ancient magic and raw power. Zara could feel the eternal relic in her hand, its presence like an extension of her own being. It was calling to her, urging her to tap into its power, but Zara resisted the urge to rush forward. "You are brave, mortal," the figure finally said, its tone shifting, almost as if it was contemplating her words. "But your actions carry consequences beyond your understanding. The power of the relic is not just a gift, it is a curse. It will consume you if you are not careful." Zara's grip on the relic tightened. She could feel its energy surging through her, almost like a heartbeat of its own. She knew the risks, but she also knew that without this power, her family, her entire civilization, would perish. The decision was made. "I will bear the consequences," she said, her voice unwavering. "I will control the relic, not let it control me." The figure studied her for a moment longer, before finally nodding in acceptance. "Very well, mortal. You have proven your resolve. But be warned. The path you have chosen will not be easy. The relic will test you in ways you cannot imagine, and once you have tasted its power, there is no turning back." With a flick of the figure's hand, the ground beneath Zara's feet cracked open, and a blinding light enveloped her. The chamber began to spin, the walls melting into streams of light and color, as if the very fabric of space-time was unraveling. Zara's vision blurred, the power of the relic rushing through her like a torrent. She felt herself being pulled, stretched, as if her very being was being torn apart and remade in an instant. The energy surged within her, flooding her mind with images of distant stars, forgotten worlds, and ancient civilizations long gone. But amid the chaos, Zara's mind remained focused. She could feel the relic's will, its ancient purpose, calling out to her. It was as though the relic was testing her, probing her very soul to see if she was worthy of its power. And, with each pulse of energy, Zara fought to maintain control. For a moment, everything stopped. The light vanished, and the room returned to its original form, the celestial watcher standing before her, its eyes still glowing with a soft, otherworldly light. "You have passed the test," the figure said, its voice filled with a mixture of awe and solemnity. "You are now bound to the relic. Its power is yours to wield, but you must tread carefully. It will not be kind to those who misuse it." Zara stood in stunned silence, the weight of the figure's words sinking in. The relic had chosen her, but now she was bound to it, its power flowing through her veins like fire. She could feel the immense responsibility that came with it, the burden of wielding such power. "I will not fail," Zara said, her voice filled with a newfound determination. She had come this far, and she would not back down now. The celestial watcher nodded, its figure beginning to fade into the shadows once more. "Then go, mortal. The relic is yours. But remember this, great power comes with great sacrifice. Be careful what you wish for." As the figure vanished, Zara took a deep breath, steadying herself. The temple was silent once more, but the weight of the relic in her hand felt heavier than ever. She had passed the trial, but the true journey of understanding the relic's power and purpose was just beginning. With a final glance at the altar, Zara turned and walked toward the exit of the temple. She had claimed the eternal relic, but now she had to learn how to control it and face whatever consequences awaited her.